Right. So, gosh, it given me the opportunity to leave the meeting. Was I even tempted there? Right. Well, thank you everybody for coming. I recognize quite a lot of faces here, including I have had, hi Elaine. I have Eileen. Oh my God. Oh, I've got Saturdays in my mouth there. Um, including a number of you who came along to a sneak preview I gave some of your one of your committees on the YellowYoYo branding. But for everybody else, in case we're sort of not sort of au fait with all the things, because I have been a little bit remiss about publishing all the detail of our plans, and that's sort of next on my emergency list to sort of get my communications a little bit better sorted out. One of the things that I took on when I took over from Simon Linford as president of the Central Council of Church Bell Ringers was a 7-year strategy to improve the experience, to make Bellringing a little bit more unified and improve our recruitment profile and make us look more attractive to people outside of our usual recruitment spaces. Now, most of the towers are in England. I'm not even going to say the UK because most of them are in England. Where I live in Scotland, we only have 20 towers, and 2 of them aren't ringable at the moment. So, and I think those 5,000 towers that are in England have gotten used to just sort of collecting people out of the choir and out of the church congregation, have never had the experience that we've had in America, we've had in Scotland, and that has been the experience in Australia, New Zealand, and other places of actually having to reach out into the community beyond the church congregation and recruit people. And now it's coming as a little bit of a shock that we can't, we're not getting those people, that sort of group is drying up. That connection with the church is still hugely important. They own the stuff they own the hardware and they own the instruments. And that relationship is necessary and mutually beneficial. But we need to look outside. If we're going to be a properly international and inclusive organization, we need to spread our wings a bit wider. And one of the things that we have been thinking about doing, one of the things that we thought was necessary to do was actually make us look better to people who aren't ringers. And by better, I mean actually presenting a unified message about what bell ringing is and sharing the things that we love about bell ringing. If you look at most, and I'm going to accept the North American Guild website out of this because the North American website is pretty good. And it's recently had a refresh. And it's quite a radical change from a traditional ringing website, and in a good way. But a lot of ringing websites, I have done a survey of them, and for example, a lot of them don't actually mention the word ringing on the homepage, or a couple don't even mention the word bell. So when you're somebody new looking maybe for somewhere to go ring in, and you come across one of these websites, you have absolutely no idea what that association is doing, what it's there for, and what its purpose is. So having what I would call the killer mission statement, or even unifying visuals is all part of a larger recruitment and what I call defragmentation of communications, which we're now calling Ringing 2030, which is to give us a deadline to start making change happen. And in the current deputy president of the Central Council, who is also a woman, yay, Vicky Chapman, at one of these meetings, everyone was saying, let's put together our strategy. Let's put together our strategy. And Vicky said, yes, but why don't we actually put a deadline on it to get our act together and let us get it doing something. And so that was the birth of Ringing 2030. And in fact, I'm going to share a couple of screens. So just to give you a flavor so you're going to see a nice little graphic there for a minute before I switch to here. I'm just going to show you the ambition that we have in Ringing 2030. It divides into 3 areas. One is marketing, our first pillar. So this is better marketing, and I mean not internal marketing. This is in marketing to people who aren't bell ringers. So these are people that maybe we have zero expectation of recruiting. Or slim expectation of recruiting, but it's all about building awareness of bell ringing in the general world. And, you know, things like being listed as an intangible cultural heritage with UNESCO would be a part of building that awareness of the value of bell ringing in the communities where it's practiced and ways that we can spread it. And so this is really all about wider marketing. So one of the things, and that's what I'm going to talk about today, is our YellowYoYo branding exercise. One of the things that happened over last summer was we actually spent some money and hired a branding company. We hired a marketing company. These things are always sort of fraught with anxiety in the bell ringing world because we're used to doing things on a shoestring. And there seems to be an innate trust of you know, professionals that they fear they're going to get ripped off or something. But this company we selected, there was a careful process of selection with selection YellowYoYo. There are some professional connections with Elva Ainsworth, who is a very talented HR person and you know, with some marketing background, but she had a very close relationship with the man who owns YellowYoYo. And I have to say that the care that they exercised in the research phase of the project, which just ended in October, the research phase of that project was incredibly thorough, and they were very, very careful. They had no idea what bell ringing was when they came in. And, you know, their initial thing was sort of to treat it like any customer. And it took about 10 minutes for them to realize that we were a very, very different proposition from the normal company that comes in. Normally they have one client. But one of the things they said straight away was, oh my God, what we have is 5,000 clients. So how do we deal with this? And the complexity of bell ringing, you know, how do we simplify it in a way that's not insulting, not silly, not Mars bar ads with people, you know, how do we do it? And how do we do it while still looking genuine? So not trying to leap on a trend. So they did a lot of research and a lot of thinking about how we could portray ourselves and how we thought about ourselves. And they've come up with some really good themes and some language that we are starting to use in marketing campaigns and social media campaigns. And they go around themes of being welcoming, logic, because there is a large group of people that are attracted to bell ringing because of the mathematical and logical things, the teamwork, the music, and the physical activity, the idea of it as a sport. So all of those things, we can't talk about all of those things ever at the same time all at once, but you can have separate. The idea was we would target different audiences with different language and different marketing campaigns. So that's the YellowYoYo branding exercise. Also, the touring tower with the mobile belfry, that was something that was already in flight. And that is just about finished, due to be finished. And that in the long term, all of this YellowYoYo work comes in, and it's going to feed an increase in marketing collateral, which will be shared with all associations. The Central Council is developing and paying for this so that all associations have access to high quality marketing material. What's going on right now with YellowYoYo is they're taking the branding that we've agreed on, and which I'm just about to show you. And they're building some templates that we can use, but they're also giving us the assets and we can build our own templates. Once we've built up a nice sort of set of marketing collateral in collaboration with YellowYoYo, but also doing some of it ourselves, we want to actually, in the next year, really launch a major marketing campaign. And that is the goal of this pillar. So all of these activities here are coming in towards doing that. That is no longer paused. That has just been woken up this week. So school lesson plans for bell ringing, that's actually developed PDF videos and, you know, quizzes and things for incorporating bell ringing into, in fact, math lessons. But there are plans to develop it into other kinds of lessons as well. The other pillar on this, so marketing is super, super key. Super, super key to ringing 2030. But part of that is ensuring that we have a good stream of recruitment. And our thinking behind our recruitment hub, and this is probably a lot of our budget is going right in here. The recruitment hub is really, if we do this brilliant marketing and we get all these people coming in, where are we going to send them? And we want to send them someplace that they're going to find welcoming and that they're going to find the information that they want, whether they just want to learn a little bit more about bell ringing. Do they want to visit bell ringing and see what it looks like? Do they want to have a taster session, or do they just want to go all in and be taught? That recruitment hub is a key part. Behind that is a whole recruitment network, and that is building on the Ringing Remembers network that Bruce and Arlene were extremely involved in, and really, I think, managed the whole thing with a network of people that they passed recruits onto. And that was a tremendous amount of work, and we want to sort of build that into something a little bit more automated, but which still gets people to a person fairly quickly so they can have a real conversation with a real bell ringer and establish what they need. So there's some software going on behind that, but also a people network that we need to develop. And that has just really kicked off this month. And including on that, developing a university ringing network, basically a young person's ringing network, more regional summer schools. The ringing survey is a big piece of this as well, and that's underway and should be finished in a couple months. And this is all really to give people a place to go to, including a recruitment hub, a website, which is just a public-facing website, which will not be geographically located. It will be general. It will be general about bell ringing, and it's a recruitment hub that bell ringers from anywhere in the world can hook into and be part of that recruitment network. And that means that when we have a big marketing campaign, we can say, go to this easy URL. Here's this easy to use website, which is not cluttered with stuff that ringers need to know, but is basically just helping people find somewhere to ring first, or somewhere to find out more about ringing. So this is a really, really chunky piece of work, and it is going to take years, but is very, very important. Our third pillar is really about making our environments better and safer and more inclusive. So the project teams, really, this is where we look at maybe having some better association websites, either off the back of the recruitment website, which is, I think, the direction we're now going to be going in. But also having some templates so that when people travel from one section to another, if you leave Lancashire and you go over to Yorkshire, or if you leave America and you move to Bath, you can find your way to a bell tower. And amazingly, some of those association websites just don't do that very well. And we lose ringers in that transition period when they leave university and go find a job somewhere, when they transition from school into university, when they transition from school into other destinations, apprenticeships or anything, or straight into work. That's a really, really leaky pipe right at that point. So some of this, again, is just trying to make everything a little bit more consistent. But we've also got some really, really key things which don't feel like they're part of Ringing 2030, but really are. So one of this is, the capturing of the tower engineering, bell movement, and all of this stuff. We have a lot of expertise that other people can call on within the bell ringing community. But most of this expertise is really of retirement age, and we really, really need to pass this information on. And so we've actually captured that as a project over the next 12 months. And are recruiting young people interested in towers or doing engineering to get involved. And if we know anybody in the North American Guild that would like to be involved in this knowledge transfer, or if you have knowledge transfer, please get in touch. This is a really, really important thing that underpins everything else. And the other thing that we're doing, which is sort of less of a happy path, is a big piece of research to evaluate what the impact of church closures is going to be on bell ringing. That has got less impact on the North American Guild because it's spread out amongst all kinds of different congregations, plus a lot of secular towers, which is the same for Scotland, and it's the same for other overseas places. But for those nearly 5,000 towers that are in England and Wales, and to a certain degree in Scotland, the reduction in congregation numbers, the economic impact, especially since all the COVID stuff and the lockdowns has had on attendance, the general aging of the population, the general rise in secularity in culture over here, means that really most of these, the Church of England, the Church of Scotland, and others like it can't afford to keep all these churches open, and there's nobody going to them anyway, except for the bell ringers. And this has that can just stop everything, really. If we don't have a strategic way to deal with that, or in fact talk to people, and decide where we're going to put our attention, we are not going to be able to save every tower, is the harsh reality of that. But we have to have a plan for how to save it, or whether there are things we can do to help keep some of these churches open. And we also have to consider, for example, in London in particular, the rise of very, very evangelical congregations, which are growing. So it's not like Christianity is on its deathbed in the UK, but evangelical congregations are growing in churches where there are bells, and they are not interested in the bells, and in some cases are more than not interested in the bells. They really just don't want them there. And that also has an impact, which we have to consider. And that's I don't know that we've got an answer to that, or whether we'll even get an answer to that. But anyway, this is a very ambitious piece of work. Yes, anybody who wants to volunteer in any small way to be a piece of any of these projects, please, capture me on my email, president@cccbr.org.uk, and I will find you a job to do. Right, here's the sexy part. This is our new logo, which is a bell made up of, in UK terms, a quaver, and what Simon Linford calls a listening ear. So this is on the theme of the musicality of bell ringing. And this was, of all the logo presentations that they gave us over the last sort of 3 or 4 months, this is the one that we really liked. It was quite striking. One of the things that we liked about this is it has a story. But it doesn't tell the story straight away. So as bell ringers, when we market out to anybody, we tend to just give them too much information. And that's not just bell ringers. I mean, any amateur organization does the same thing. And we're really going with a less is more kind of graphical presentation here. So this is a bell. It has music, it has listening, and it's a really simple, vivid graphic, which can go on a website, on an app. So it can be shrunk down very tiny, it can be made very large, it can go on a t-shirt, it can go on clothing, it can go on a mug, and it's really instantly recognizable. So this, from a graphical point of view, is going to be our graphic. And what we really want is as many associations and or towers to adopt this as possible as part of their recruitment campaign, or if you're ready to redesign your tower website, again, reach out. And I can give you some nice assets along this color scheme. We are adding this design to the belfries and the mobile belfry trust, starting with the touring tower. Our recruitment website is going to have this brand in. Who else is going to? We're doing some publicity branding for an international scout jamboree as a trial of some of our marketing material. And there is some interest from a couple of associations to just go over to this branding, because their website just needs a lot of work, and they don't have a recognizable logo. So we are using this in social media and stuff. Here's what it looks like in a colored background. So if it was going to be on a stationery, on a website, or on a station, anything where we're announcing bell ringing, the word that we want to use to the public, and this is also important, it's not just about the graphic, is bell ringing. We're not going to use change ringing to the general public, because that requires too much explanation and nobody knows what it is. Bell ringing is something that people understand, and it also but it's not just ringing. It kind of implies we've got a little something more. And then this can just be customized for a tower name, a location, an association, anything like that. So all of our Central Council campaign websites, we're going to brand with this, and I'm looking at branding our publications this way as well, rather than with the Central Council logo, the Bellringing logo, the Bellringing imprint coming in. We've also actually asked YellowYoYo to do this reversed as well, so you could have Kalamazoo, Bellringing, that kind of thing. This is how it, we can change how it looks. So we can do it centered on the bottom. We can do it up here, like a sort of a strip logo, top of a stationery. The power of this very, very simple logo is that we can do it in different color schemes, in reverses. And this is the suggested color palette. I have to say, from the SACR, this is handy because this is the SACR glue. And there was also some other pieces that we looked at potentially for logos. And in fact, this swoosh that we see here on this picture of, admittedly not change ringing bells, was also a logo that we looked at as a logo treatment. We thought that this was more commanding, but they also developed this that we could sort of, exactly as we got here, we can add to photographs, we can add to social media cards or frames, or we can use it to frame text. So one of the things that they are developing for us is a couple of easy pull down posters that we can go to with stands or recruitment fairs or anything like that, that has this branding on it. They're going to do a couple of those for us, and it'll be available as a file, and we can go and anybody can go and get them done. These are going to be very wordy. One of the things that YellowYoYo was very clear with us about was we should keep this super, super simple, and not try and explain everything and not crowd it with a lot of pictures. I mean, we could have a picture here with less text, but to keep it super, super simple and to give enough to pique people's interest and maybe make them click on maybe enter the URL and explore further, or talk to somebody or drop their phone number off or whatever it is they do. I'm afraid bellringing.co.uk is not the URL that's going to be used here. One, it's .co.uk, but two, ART already have it. And they were not particularly interested in letting me have it. So, so we are just sort of looking for a similar URL with a non-geographic domain name, so that it's very, very clear that this will be an international initiative. So that gives them somewhere to go. This can go on a website. So this is an example of a pretty basic kind of website that, WordPress will do, GitHub pages will do, any kind of off-the-shelf website thing, how easy it is to sort of get this branding in. Another thing that we have actually asked YellowYoYo to provide is a footer kind of piece that has this bell ringing logo and stuff as the footer, so that even for people who maybe don't have the bandwidth or don't want to alter their current website, their current tower association website or activity website, we can at least put a unifying banner across the bottom. And I mean, I have to confess, I don't have the bandwidth really to completely redo the Central Council website, which is enormous, and took a lot of work to get it where it is now. So we will be doing something a little bit compromised on the Central Council website, but that's an inward-facing website and not an outward-facing website. The nice thing is when we sort of launch our recruitment website, which is going to take another year, that's something that all ringing societies can tap into, which means, our own association websites don't have to be quite so Jekyll and Hyde. We don't have to try and meet the needs of people who aren't ringers as well as meet the needs of people who are. And that gives our, strategic focus on those websites. It just makes that job a little bit easier. Again, you see we have this swoosh in here, and I have another example, something where we can put an image in, and some words. Those aren't quite the words we're going to use, but pretty close. Yep. And Is that? Oh, yes, yes. And then, sorry, the yellow is YellowYoYo's brand in. There's no yellow in our brand in, just to say. One of the other ideas that they came across was one of the method lines, the method patterns, and how we translate that into sort of sound waves, sort of music with the bell and stuff. And this was their first couple of passes on it. And we spent a lot of time discussing this because we really, really liked this concept as describing exactly the kind of bell ringing we do looks like this in a way. You know, it all comes together. There's some order to it. It comes together in this bell sound. It implies the teamwork. It implies that complexity. It implies a lot of things. However, as a logo, it is really busy. And so to put this on a website or on an app, it was just too noisy. But we did really like it. So we did ask them to sort of work on it a little more, make it look less like an EEG diagram and more like a method. It's not a particular method, by the way, so don't try and figure out what method it is. It's just methody. And so we've got a few treatments of that with alternating colors, again, showing people working together. One of the things we liked about this was that, again, it tells a story, but not a lot of story. And so it creates a sense of mystery and forces people to ask, what is this? And then we can talk to them about bell ringing. And this is a secondary graphic that we can use, for example, on mugs, on merchandise, on promotional items that we might give out, bookmarks, for example, and but also use on as a frame on social media or even putting on pictures. So we can also use it with bell ringing, where we actually want a busier logo, we can use it there. But we can do this nice kind of piece here for a hero image on a website or on a poster. Yes, and so that's what our branding looks like. And within a few weeks, it was all supposed to be done by now. But in fact, what's happened is Christmas kind of got in our way, and we were a little bit slow giving them some content and pictures that they could build some of the assets with. So they're going to make these assets available to us. So we're going to have the logo. We have also asked them to sort of show us an example of how we could have the bell ringing logo alongside another ringing logo, because some bell ringing associations do have really good logos and have long associations with those logos. So, can we put them together so that we still have unity, but we still, keep that identity that exists for a long time. So they're doing a few things like that. They're going to give us some very, very nice, easy to follow ways that we can use it. And then we'll have the assets. And as I say, the assets will be available as digital assets that any association can download and create their own materials for. We can go to YellowYoYo and ask them for other, other designs and other templates. We'll have to pay them, but I mean, it's something that's worth considering because they're doing a really good job for us. And it's something that benefits all ringers. So yeah, no, we're very, very pleased with that. Does anybody, I've been talking a lot. Oh, I'm sorry. I've talked longer than I meant to. Does anybody have any questions or comments? And then I have a question for you.
There's you might want to take a look at the chat because there's some questions.
Oh gosh, there's a lot of chat. Sorry, I missed that in the thing. Let me come.
And Mona has a question. So.
Yes, I'm not sure what's run for the Central Council, but this is more like a, yes. How do people get ambiguous?
Tina, what are you responding to? I don't know what you're responding
Yeah. No, that's fine. Some of these are just conversations rather than comments I need to make. So Anag, is that an Anna somebody possibly?
Energy, yeah.
Yep, Energy has said, sounds like rehoming bells might be something to discuss along with any association building tower and transport costs. But she does also ask, how do people get disambiguating between us and tune ringing? And the answer, I think in the first instance, is we don't care. Once they're in and interested, it'll become obvious what we're doing is different from what tune ringing is. And actually, if some people pick up tune ringing as a result of our bell ringing campaign, then hurrah, it's more people bell ringing. Mona, you have your hand up.
Yes, I was wondering if you could repeat the email that you said earlier.
I will put it right here in the chat.
Great, thank you.
Or you can just email me directly. To be honest, it comes to the same place, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. Right, so let me come in here. Is this solely a North American plan? And the answer is no. As Eileen has said, no, this is an international plan. It sometimes, so the Central Council of Church Bell Ringers, although we have a .org.uk domain name on our website, is actually it is a body that represents change ringers all the world over. Most of the towers, as we all know, are in the UK, and therefore really a lot of initiatives have been really, really UK focused. And let me be honest, they've been very England focused. And, you know, for certain kinds of things, especially with, you know, things like safeguarding legislation, insurance and stuff like that, they really do need to be England focused. But for other things, you know, we're cutting ourselves off by thinking that what happens in the majority works everywhere, and it doesn't. So this is meant to be one of those things that the Central Council is doing that the North American Guild can benefit from as much as the Lincoln Diocesan Guild. Yeah. Yeah. Glad the chat wasn't distracting. So Lindsay Hutt Fletcher says, I hear a lot from people who say, I couldn't do it. I am not musical, so wise to emphasize music. We really liked the musical angle, and I think you're absolutely right, Lindsay. That's what a lot of people say. That, and a lot of people say, oh, you must have to be really strong to do that. To which I point to the littlest bell ringer in my tower and say, she rings our 1.5 ton bell. So yes, because everybody in our tower rings our 1.5 ton bell. Why would we include a picture of bells hung dead? Alan, that's from Alan Nunley, says, why would we include a picture of bells hung dead? So that, what you saw in that presentation is not the final artwork. That was just sample artwork. I mean, one of the logos that they sent us was it was a really, really good idea. It had a bell and it had sound waves coming off the side of the bells, but very, very, I don't know what the word is, sort of, you know, it was very graphical anyway. So it wasn't as busy as I'm making it sound, but unfortunately the bell shape that they used, we were all like, that looks like Taco Bell. And they're like, yeah, but you know, it's you know, we're not marketing to bell ringers, and we're like, no bell ringer is gonna put this on anything because it looks like the Taco Bell bell. Yeah. So that logo had to go. I mean, and you know, that also had a lot of potential because it was the moving sound, you know. But we did take some elements from that thinking. But yeah, no, the bells hung dead. To be honest, you know, the onus is on us to give them the photographs and the content and the words. Let me come in safety. Alan Nunley says there have been challenges on internationalization since changeover in CCCBR 6 years ago. How will you proceed to improve this? That is a very good question, Alan. And in fact, to be honest, I would have to say challenges on internationalization are more than 6 years old. More than 6 years.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. So in fact, the changes that came from the CRAG team 6 years ago, I mean, that actually did the most influential people, and in fact, making these changes happen were coming from international ringing societies. And so all of these societies are punching hugely above their weight in terms of influence around in the Central Council, and the actual work that it does really, you guys are carrying a bigger load than many much larger societies. And that's been true of all of what I would call our remote societies. So how will I proceed to improve this? Well, one, I have experience of not ringing in England. And I bring that experience to the executive, you know, too. Beverly is on the executive as well. And so we have more international representation on the executive than we have done for quite a while. And 3, I keep reminding people of this. But 4, it's having meetings like this. So I'm really, really glad that you've invited me not once, but twice in the space of 2 months. And I'm really happy to come back and talk again in a few months about how we're doing, or, you know, if we wanted to have a town hall, you could ask me questions or anything like that, or if I have somebody else, something else to demonstrate. So it's reaching out like this and understanding, but also making sure that I get international ringers represented on some of these teams, just to make sure that you know, we're not missed out, and not just one, actually. So there's some interesting pieces of research been done in gender studies, in gender in the workplace, where, you know, having one woman on the board or one woman in a senior management team or something like that, and she still gets drowned out. I mean, it's better than none, but it's very, very isolating. Adding a second woman to that group suddenly opens a lot of doors, and everybody is listening and collaborating a lot more, because it's not just one woman being difficult. It's 2 women being difficult. And so what we really want is not just one international representative on a group, but 2. So that adds, and that more than doubles the effect. The next gathering is on April the 27th. Perhaps nice to get an update from the CCCBR as one of the sessions. I think I've left my phone downstairs, which has my easy calendar on it, but I think the April the 27th could be possible. Will there be a handbell-oriented logo? No. No. Handbell ringing is a niche activity and I am a handbell ringer, and even I recognize that it's a pretty niche activity. But you know, you asked that, and now you're asking that, and it might be interested to go. It might be interested to go back to YellowYoYo and just see what they might do with a handbell. I think that would be very interesting. So actually, thank you. That's I'm gonna think about that for a bit. But yeah, in the immediate future at the moment, no. It's just bell ringing. The reason why we just keep it straight bell ringing.
Tina, could I go back to that question Lindsay asked? Sort of saying that I think her point, which I don't think you really got, is that if you're making it look like it's about music, then people who don't think they're musical aren't going to be interested. And I think this is a real problem. And I think so if you're emphasizing that it's a musical hobby, then people who don't consider themselves musical, which I think includes a huge number of bell ringers, might not sort of be interested in that. I think that although there are certainly elements of music in it, I don't think that is how most bell ringers would see it. But maybe that's just my terribly science nerdy background coming through. But yeah, I guess how much did you consider that in terms of coming up with that logo and how choosing to emphasize that side of it?
So thank you for clarifying that. So the musical element of it isn't the only thing, because we are, you know, we want to do campaigns emphasizing other things other than music. But instead, I mean, I think instead of, you know, the words that are there, again, are placeholder text, but maybe we can do something like music like you've never known it, or music available to anybody. Because in fact, I literally had somebody come up who wanted to learn about bell ringing, who actually did come through the congregation. Oh my God, it's the first ringer we've had coming through the massive congregation at St. Mary's in about 10 years. But there you are. And she came in from the congregation. She said, I've been hearing about this bell ringing. I want to reconnect with my musical side. I used to play clarinet, but I want to do something musical. And I was like, okay, but you have to understand, this is nothing like any music you've ever learned. This is completely different from any music you ever learned. And she says, yes, I'm kind of hoping that it will be. So I think that's probably how we need to massage it. But it is a very, very good point, because it's amazing how many bell ringers don't think of themselves as musicians. And I think bell ringing absolutely is music, 100%. I have a 1,000-word thesis that says it is, with lots of evidence. And even sometimes people will say, oh, well, Tina, you're a musician. I'll be like, no. Yeah. So, and then they're like, yeah, but the bell ringing. I was like, oh, okay.
I
Yeah.
guess maybe
Go for it.
I'd say it feels odd to include a quaver in the logo when our musical writing definitely does not include quavers
No,
or
it does
eighth
not.
notes.
Yeah. But it's just really to indicate that it's music. It's a very, very clever way to put the clapper in, I think. Yeah. Without making it look like a Taco Bell. So, yeah. Alan Nunley has said, can you comment on how you get from any bell ringers differentiation in diverse interests? You're going to have to clarify that.
So you spoke earlier, says, oh, we'll take any bell ringers, right? Earlier you were talking about that. If they were, if they didn't immediately figure out it was change ring, you said you kind of go on and what we are doing will become obvious to them, right?
Yeah.
And then and you also talked a little bit about, sorry about that, making sure that people that are or aren't musicians, get suitably pointed toward how music does work with change ring and, why it's musical, but it's not, but it's different. And then, on with other discussions and other interests. Different things bring people to ringing, right? There
Yes.
and different focus. Mathematicians and music are a couple of them, but it's also a pretty interesting physical activity. And I'm just trying to figure out, you get from a really general message and then you start trying to differentiate it. And I guess I'd be interested in seeing what's the strategy to, what the endpoint is as to how broadly you're going to focus on different aspects of bell ringing, versus, it seems it's got a sort of a tight problem versus a broad problem. And I just wondered what's the endpoint, or, where you headed on that.
So our endpoint really is to increase awareness of bell ringing. But what's also important is that we have a simple enough message that we can at least start by saying really simple things about it, to at least start. And the idea is that starts a conversation. And then in the conversation is the detail, is the tower visit, is all that stuff, rather than hitting them with all the information at once. It is really hard. I mean, every time we do any kind of explanation about the bell ringing that we do, there's a huge amount of sort of background information that has to go in. There's like a massive backstory. And I suppose what we're really trying to do is basically start with the Hobbit and get people interested before we hit them with the Silmarillion. if you've read any Tolkien and understand that reference, but yeah, hit them with something that's fairly simple to get into and get people talking about it. So just hitting people with the logo itself isn't enough. So if we have posters or a website or something, a website's great because immediately you can present more complicated information. But also our endpoint is not necessarily the endpoint of this Brandon is about awareness building. And what we've decided is necessary for us to do is stop being really, really laser focused on recruitment, because when we're really, really laser focused on recruitment, we're just not picking up enough people. Whereas if we take a longer view of things and we basically build awareness of bell ringing. So if somebody comes along and says, oh, I'd like to try bell ringing. I heard about that in X. I heard about it there. And, it's sort of generally known about. That's a long campaign. But to bring in increased awareness, it makes it easier to sell bell ringing to people who might be interested because it's already kind of there in their head. And this was true on a very small scale for me in Kalamazoo. When I took a tour of Kalamazoo and had my interview there in my senior year in high school, we were just walking along past the beautiful Stetson Chapel, and the professor, bizarrely, who was giving me the tour, was just sort of commented and then said, "Oh, they do some kind of English bell ringing there that nobody else does in Michigan, and you know, and it's really quite unique." And that was it, and that stuck in my head. So then when I had, you know, when I saw the lecture from Jeff Smith after I'd started at Kalamazoo, I was like, oh, this is the thing they do nobody else does that sounds kind of cool. So then off I went along to the lecture, where I discovered that there were no bells at the tower. But there were handbell ringers, and eventually there was Chris and Tom and Nancy Korndike and other people like that, who managed to get me through an awful lot of ringing that I wouldn't have done by myself. How do we deal with the ethnic aspect of his being very English? That is a very, very tough question. And I think that we cannot escape what it is. And what it is really a massive cultural signifier of a certain kind of Englishness, which carries all kinds of assumptions. And it makes it very, very hard for us to recruit bell ringers from outside of the Church of England. Beyond that, outside of, you know, a general whitey kind of Christian-y background. So getting past that and being truly diverse is we don't even have an answer to that. But the problem is, you know, we can't claim that we're diverse before we are, in a way. I mean, it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing. We have to genuinely make it welcoming to all kinds of groups of people, and I think actually as we're constituted, that's pretty tough to be genuinely welcoming. And again, it's being the only person in the tower, kind of thing. So our approach to this, it's not that we're not thinking about it, but our approach to this is to solve the problems we know we can solve. So for example, gender. We know we recruit plenty of women into bell ringing. We do not have a problem with recruitment of women in bell ringing, but where we do have a problem is that they don't always, you know, get the same opportunities as male bell ringers. And actually, this is more of an English thing than it is an American thing, but we know it's a problem, and you know, we've got it evidenced. You know, Bryn and Kira were two people working on that project with me and Julia and other people, and we gathered some really, really good quality evidence to show that is a problem. But the thing is, if we can't solve that problem, we are never going to solve the bigger problem. But if we can solve that, then that gives us the toolkit for solving other problems. And it's the same thing with an age thing as well. If we can't make younger ringers feel welcome in what is an aging population of ringers, if we can't make younger people feel welcome so that we have the same broad age range, is what made ringing really kind of different and exciting, then, you know, we don't even deserve to try and be more ethnically diverse, because we just, you know, we won't know how to do it. So, I mean, I think if we can solve the problems we can solve first, and they are problems we can solve, there's no reason we can't solve them with a will and working together, then that gives us a toolkit for figuring out how we look more welcoming and diverse. And one of them, I'm afraid, is you know, we have to be maybe less closely tied to the church, and that opens us up to other populations and stuff. But you know, we have problems. You know, there's a problem with evangelical congregations, again, being quite hostile to bell ringing, but you know, also there's quite a few Islamic groups who, you know, music, that kind of music is also not encouraged and is not good. So, you know, it isn't just bell ringing itself, but, you know, we need to have a perception that, you know, the bell tower might be a different place than the church is sitting in, which is very controversial, but it's what it is. Let me see, what have we got? I think putting efforts in the musical aspect of bell ringing could actually help with that. Isn't music the language that everybody understands? I would hope so. Eileen says, we have an advantage with diversity here in North America, but we just have to work on strategy. Yes, I think you do have an advantage over the rest of the UK. But yeah, it is tough, you know, because Bellringing has the history that it does, and you know, there's colonial overtones to that, which make it hard sometimes to sell this in say in a North American milieu. You know, and we just can't ignore what that history is. So we just have to accept it and try and be better as we move forward, and be genuinely welcoming. Do we have any more questions? Oh gosh, I'm at 20:59. I think there's some bell ringing supposed to be happening soon.
Great. I'll step in. Thank you, Tina. This is really wonderful. Thank you for doing this. And I'm going to stop the recording.
Yeah.
If
Can
I
I
can
say
figure
thank
out-
you to everybody for some really, really challenging questions, really thought-provoking, and also for asking them in a really supportive way as well. This was a really encouraging environment to ask some tough questions in. And I really, really appreciate the time you spent listening to me jabber on, but also the thought that you're really, really putting into this as well. I really appreciate it.